Hi, I'm Tom Stephenson and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm a professor of construction management and I have a whole host of videos on different playlists that you can watch, whether it's project management, print reading, Microsoft project, construction business management, it's all there. In this series, right now, we're looking at reading construction drawings. It's based on the 5th edition of my textbook, Understanding Construction Drawings. You don't have to have the textbook to learn a lot here, but definitely the textbook would really sort of enhance and enrich your learning. And many of you may be students taking a course somewhere using the textbook. And in that case, if there's something that you don't quite get, hopefully it fills the gaps or increases your understanding. All right, so today we're going to be looking at line types and drawing setup. And so with regards to line types, every drawing there consists of lines, right? And so what are the different types and how are they used and how might they be positioned on the drawings? We'll talk about that. First, I just want to give an overall view of a drawing setup so that then you can kind of relate to the line types. And we'll be unpacking these drawings in future videos in this particular series. So I'm just going to pause for a minute and we're going to switch to the drawings. So right now you can see the drawings and I'm just going to go right up to the very beginning of the drawings here. And you can see that we have like a PDF of the drawings. I don't expect that. Don't worry if you can't see this because I'm not zoomed in. I just want a high level view right now. We can always, through the series, zoom in when I want to actually show you something specifically or in particular. And so right here we have the construction notes, and the construction notes give you details about the drawing. So it sort of gives you information that you find on the drawings that they don't actually want to put on the drawings because it would crowd it out. And we'll get into that in another lecture. This is a high-level view here of basically the foundation plan or basement plan. Also, you remember in a previous video we talked about scales. Well, down here is where it'll say like what scale is being used. So in this particular case it's 1:75, 1/75 of full size. The next sheet is showing a first floor plan, and the first floor plan is basically flat on. You can see where all the rooms are and all of that sort of information. So we can zip through it. There's the second floor plan, and then you're into elevations. And so in the book, I've got different chapters that focus on different elements. But today we're looking at line types, so everything is consisting of lines. So what are they? And we'll unpack that. But these are basically your elevations, and you should have an elevation for each view of the house. North, south, east, west, or front, right, left, rear that we've also talked about in previous videos. Again, there's a playlist on this series, so you can always go back to different videos that I might end up referring to. And this, we will definitely talk about this today because this is a section detail for the building. How does that work and how is that shown and what kind of symbols and line types do we use for that? And of course, here we have a roof plan for the structure. So this is all very common stuff. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview, high level, of the different drawings that we find in a set of house drawings. And this is very typical what you will find. Our objectives basically today are have a good overview of the drawing set. Well, we did that. And we want to basically interpret the different line types that you find on drawings. So here's the line types. Heavy solid line, that means it's an object. Now, again, some drawings, they're not as pronounced different things. So some things just, you got to look at the drawing and say, okay, it's a little bit different. But ideally, an object like a foundation wall, like the sides of a building, the roof lines, like a door, should be a little bit heavier weighting than say a extension line or a dimension line, right? Extension and dimension lines, those are lines we use to say what this measures from this point to this point. So those are extension lines. And dimension lines is where you'll find how long it is. So how long is this wall? It will tell you, right? Dash lines are for hidden lines. And so dash lines, basically, it means something is hidden behind something that the consultant, the architect, wants you to know, right? It's not that everything that's behind something will always be shown with a hidden line. It's like, I want you to know this is underground. I want you to know this is under the concrete slab, that kind of stuff. All right. So that's very important because hidden lines will tell you information about things that are underneath other things. So we definitely want that to come out, right, when we're looking at things. Now, dash lines may also mean other things. So as we get more advanced, dash lines could mean vent pipes for a plumber. So usually a plumber, if it's basically you're looking at a set of drawings, plumbing drawings, it could basically mean, oh, okay, so that's a vent pipe. A vent pipe is used to basically vent out sewer gas so that basically you don't contaminate the house. And it's also to improve the flow of water in your drain waste vent system. So it could be for that. Hidden lines could also be used for, this is an option. I would like to, if I pick this option, I will get a roughed-in basement washroom. If I pick this option, I will get a door to the garage. I'm using these because these are examples in the drawings that we say. All right, so dash lines could be used for that. It could be used for a lot of different things to show basically which way a window opens or if it opens. Dot dash lines usually are for center lines. So you'll usually see that's the center of something. Oh, okay, so this is going right, looks like in the middle of the window. So that's the center line of the window. It'll usually, where there's a steel beam or a wood beam, it'll show a dot dash line saying this is the center of the beam. Double dot dashes were usually for cutting plane lines. And we'll talk about that, but I wouldn't say, like for cutting plane lines, it's kind of all over the map what they do, but basically a cutting plane line is a line you're cutting through something and you want to open it up and look inside. So that would be then a detailed drawing, and we unpack detailed drawings in chapter 4. Break lines means you're cutting something off and you're saying it extends. So you usually find that on something like a staircase or a section detail to say this wall extends. Extension lines and dimension lines. So this would be an extension line. This is a dimension line. Like, I don't know territorially where you are. In my area, we typically use slash lines for construction drawings. So it just basically means you're going from this point to this point. That's the slash line. Arrows can be used. You're going from this point to this point. Dots can be used. So, you can pretty much figure it out when you look at it quick enough, though, what's going on, right? Like, so where's it going from? Where's it going to? Those are the first things that you should look at. If it's got a space, it kind of means, well, it's not going to here. It's going somewhere downstream from there. Usually they try to not have it have that, but occasionally it does. This little line pointing at something, we actually have a name for that too. That's a leader line. So that's basically, it's pointing at something. It's going to describe what it is that it's pointing at. Very often in low-rise residential drawings, we will see like this line or something very similar to it. It might be kind of like thicker over here and a little bit thicker over there. This is the direction of the joists. So floor joists are what supports our floors in wood frame construction. And so the direction of the joist, they could be going this way, they could be going this way. When you see this symbol, you know what direction it is, and you know it's for the floor joist. And then on top of it, they will say what it is. They might say 2 by 8 at 16 inches on center. So that means you're putting 2 by 8 inch materials, joists, for whatever species of wood in your area. Ours is spruce pine, fir. And it's going to go in that direction. If it's in metric, all right, it might say 38 by 235. 38 by 235, that would be like a 2 by 10, right? So a 2 by 10, 38 by 235, that's 1.5 inches by about 9 1/4 inches, right? For those that are imperial based. I'm in Toronto, Canada. We use the metric system for our building codes, but a lot of our drawings are imperial in low-rise residential. So in low-rise residential, they're in imperial. Pretty much everything else, like commercial, civil projects, condominium buildings, is in metric in Canada. But low-rise residential, it's a little bit of a different beast. And I would say most are in imperial measurement. But the drawings I'm kind of showing today are in metric, but it doesn't really matter what the measurement system is, as long as you know which one it is. This, of course, would be a center line. And typically, if you see it going from one end to the other on like a floor plan, that would be referring to the center of a beam. So if I take a little close-up here of this floor plan, so this is a little bit of a close-up from the overall floor plans that we were just looking at. It's called the Doncaster model. It comes full set of drawings with the textbook. You would be looking at the foundation plan. So if you have the textbook, I'd look at the foundation plan drawings for the Doncaster. You'll see this corner here. And I've kind of identified where certain elements. So you see, that's what I was just referring to. That is the direction of the floor joist. So it's kind of got like a doubled line. It might be a single line like this up here. But in that, you'd be able to identify it pretty easily. And then here, it is saying 38 by 184. Well, that's a 2 by 8. So if it was imperial, it'd just say 2 by 8 spruce. Number 2, that's the grade of the lumber. And 400 on center, well, that's not exactly the same. We talked about that in a previous video, but it's acceptable building code wise, 16 inches on center. You're going to lay these out at 16 inches on center because you're going to be working with 4 foot by 8 foot sheets of subfloor. Subfloor is basically the material you put on top of the joist. We call that the subfloor because on top of that you put the finished floor. And then it says W, and we'll talk about abbreviations in one of the upcoming videos, which is in chapter 4, with bridging and strapping. All right, so that just means there's going to be bridging, usually cross bridging. All right, that really strengthens the floor. And in this case, because it's probably a pretty long span, it's going to have strapping. So in our building code, if you put strapping, and you only find that usually in a basement situation, it allows you to stretch out a little bit further with the materials. Of course, we might, in an alternative situation, another set of drawings that I have with the book, The Brace Side, we use basically an engineered floor system. And we'll talk about that again coming up in other videos. So the floor joist direction, this is the beam location. So that's that center line I told you about. And I know it's a beam because this is W200 by 27. W200, the W means wide flange I-beam. 200 means it's 200 millimeters high. An alternative to that would be W8, which would be 8 inches. By 27. The 27 is kilograms per meter, how much it weighs per meter. The more it weighs, the stronger the beam, the heavier it is. If it was imperial, it might be like a W8 by 15. That would be then 15 pounds per foot, right? That'd be pretty heavy for that. So that would be, say, a W8 by 15. So the last number always relates to the weight. If it's metric, in meters. If it's imperial, in feet. The middle measurement is the height of the beam, and the first one is telling you what type, like it's a wide flange I-beam, typical I-beam for construction. Okay, and this dashed line over here is referring to, remember I said dash lines could be for options. Well, optional 3-piece rough-in bath. They're not putting the bathroom in, but they would rough it in. So basically, when you pour the concrete floor, you'd have all of your drains for your tub, your toilet. The sink ones would be also run into underneath the slab so that you don't have to break up the slab when you do the bathroom maybe a few years later. So that's an option. This dash line is more of what I was referring to, a hidden line, and that's showing that there's a footing underneath the concrete slab. And that footing is going to support this steel column, which is supporting this steel beam. So we'll be looking at this in more detail as we go through this series and the textbook. This is basically showing a cutting plane line, which is cutting through, and then there would be a detail that would show basically the grade beam, because this is actually a grade beam in this particular picture here. All right. So that's basically giving you a few line types. Now the objects obviously are like, object lines are like the foundation wall. So see how they're kind of thicker and heavier? That's the foundation wall. Anything that's an object, the window, that's an object. The door, technically that's an object. In this case, it's optional, all right, because you got an optional cold cellar here. Otherwise, it's unexcavated. It means that it's just filled in with dirt. If you pick the option for the cold cellar, it's excavated, you got an extra room. You know, you want to store preservatives, wine, whatever, down there. It's an unconditioned space. All right. So basically, yeah, we'll take a look at this here. So basically, we'll look at what this displays, but we'll talk about center lines of windows, doors, edge of doors, and reference the dimensions, right? So let's take a look. So we've got here displaying center line to the center of a window. This is looking at a plan view of a drawing. This is the swing of the door. So this door would be a right-hand door because if you stand in the doorway looking this direction, your right arm is on this side. That's how you tell whether it's a right-hand or a left-hand door. If you stand where the hinge is here, I always refer to it because the technical name for a hinge is a butt hinge. All right, so you go in and you actually look at the hinges they use for doors. Technically, they're called butt hinges. So I always say you stand with your butt against the butt hinge, looking this direction. Okay, well, my arm, if I'm looking that direction, my left arm is here. That's a left-hand door. If I'm here, my butt against the butt, that's a right-hand door. That you won't make a mistake. Because a lot of times with construction, we're ordering pre-hung doors. And so you want to order them whether they're right or left, the right way or correct way. When I was younger, I remember my dad had me measure up all these doors. It was for this apartment building. They were being steel doors custom made. And I messed up a number of them, what was right and what was left. And I always remember the door vendor telling me, just remember, butt to the butt, right hand, left hand. And after that, I never had it wrong after that. These are casement windows. And this is the center line. And you can see this is using arrows in this case. I said we usually use slashes, but in this case, sample from the book, it's got arrows. Pretty clear where it's going from and where it's going to. So a lot of cases you may find it goes to the center line, the measurements for the extension lines. Or if in the case of masonry, solid masonry like brick and block or precast concrete, very often it goes to the edges. You just got to look at it and you'll know. That's all. I'm not going to tell you it's always this way, it's always that way, because it depends. It just depends. This is a break line, and that's just saying, well, there's more to this floor plan than you're seeing. It continues, right? So again, and these are all object lines showing the walls going around. This would be a sliding door here. These are casement with looks like a fixed glass window in the middle. A cutting plane line, just to reiterate, is where you cut through something. All right, so you cut through something and you look inside to see what do you actually see. All right, so I'm cutting through it and I'm seeing only the end grain, only the glass. I would only be seeing the end of it. And there would be a section detail that would look straight on with what you're seeing, right? So it's really sort of this looking through, cutting through, and what do I see when I open it up? So very important to understand that concept because it's foundational to everything in construction drawings. Low-rise residential, there might not be that many details that are provided, but once you start doing more complex buildings, like there's a lot of details. And so how you reference those drawings becomes pretty important. So in this case, you can see here that it is cutting through. So this is like saying it doesn't show it cutting all the way through. Maybe I can just draw this out for you a little bit here. It would be cutting through here. The designer wants you to see the most information possible. So it's kind of cutting through where the stairs is, and it's cutting through where this box window is, which is cantilevered out. So you can see inside the structure. And it's not only cutting through on the basement, on every floor plan. On every floor plan, you're going to see this above. So this is like a section through the whole house where you can see through the whole house and what it looks like. So I can see where the stairs is here, right? So I'll just get rid of this here. I can see where the stairs is. I can see where that cantilevered box window is, and I can kind of see what's going on. We'll look at, when we talk about framing later in this series, we'll look at what's cantilevering, what's exactly going on here, and what does that actually look like, because I've got photographs in the book of the construction process, so you can see what does it actually look like. I can see the footings. They're showing them dashed because they're underneath the ground, so that's why they're showing, you're looking through the ground, so it's behind the ground. So they're showing the footings. And then, like I said, they'd have that cutting plane line going across on every floor, so I could see what's going on in every floor. I see some good information here because I see that the floor here is one level and that it says sunken laundry area. I can see that this goes down a couple of steps here. So that's very helpful for me when I'm trying to understand what's going on. I can see that this steps down. And the detailed designation very often on more complex drawings. So in chapter 16 of the book, I go through a small commercial building. Because there's so many details, it not only just says A, like, I mean, what was shown on the previous, this is section AA. Why is it section AA? Because this is AA. There's a BB, a CC, a DD, an EE. But there's not that many section details in this series of drawings because they're not that complex. But when you get into stuff that's more complex, and there could be like 100 different details or 200 details, you want to be able to reference it. Okay, well then this means that this would be detail number 1 on page A3 of 6 pages of architectural drawings, right? There may be slight differences, but once you figure out how that designer does it, you'll find it's very, very helpful for you. Right? So once you see how that designer does it, you'll find it's very helpful. So 1, A3 of 6, right? Architectural drawings, that's what the A stands for, page 1 and 6. Because you could have S3, that would be structural, right? So in some drawings, you know, there could be 70, 80, 100 pages of drawings that you're looking through. Whereas these that I'm showing you right now, there's like 7 pages that I showed you at the beginning. So you get used to how they're referenced and how to look at them, right? Here's a few more line types in use. Object lines, break line. Usually you find a break line on the stairs. It continues. And usually because they show one stair over top of the other, it saves a lot of space, right? So having one stairs, that's very common where you have one stairs right above the other. So you're kind of saying, okay, you're looking down, we're seeing part of this stairs, but it continues, but we're also seeing part of that stairs above it. That's why there's a break line typically where you have a stairs, right? The dash line as an X, that's this designer's way. They like to show an X when they're saying that there's a change in ceiling height or floor height. So something's a little bit different. So it's kind of flagging it for you. They're telling you before on the next floor plan, sunken laundry area. On this floor plan, well, if it's sunken, right? If it's sunken, it's low headroom. You don't have the same kind of headroom here, right? So you don't get like a 8-foot ceiling here. You get like, maybe you get like a 6'6" ceiling or a 6'2" ceiling, whatever that may be, right? So that's giving you sort of that indication. Here, this is the center lines, but I know they're, because of the abbreviation, they're double joists. Double joists. The DJ refers to double joists, right? So it might say TJ. Okay, that would be the center line for triple joists. That's how that typically spells out, right? This is a hidden line showing the footing. All right, so this is basically a hidden line showing that there's a footing under this wall. Now, the footing goes all the way around the whole house, but you'll see they only show it on the corners just because they just didn't want to crowd it out. You know, the more lines, the more confusing things get. So you got to know that, oh, it's not that the footing just goes this far. It goes around the whole house. We call that a strip footing, right? And we'll unpack that in chapter 6. So the X pattern again, well, this is the garage floor slab. It's not going to be at the same elevation as the height of the ceiling, right? So that's going to be at a different elevation because of that. Here is that cutting plane line B that is showing us over here the grade beam, and it's saying 410M rebars. That means that there's 4 10-millimeter diameter steel bars, deformed bars, which means they have kind of ridges in it so the concrete grabs it. And that's reinforcing to strengthen the garage floor. And if you look at that, it's pretty much where the cars park, right? So those are grade beams that are put into there. We already talked about the floor joist and basically the rough-in aspects. Oh, and these are extension lines. That's the other thing. The extension lines very often don't go right up to the building. I don't want to make them longer than I need to, but I like to stand it off from the actual building, or this designer likes to stand it off from the individual building. But I find students very often, if I ask for what's the thickness of the wall, they keep looking here and they don't expand their field of vision. Always expand your field of vision. Don't just get so hung up, it's not there, I don't see it. Start expanding your field of vision. You'll be surprised how many times the dimension is there that you thought it wasn't. The other thing is you'll notice there's some notes peripherally. Always look around the edges if they got any kind of notes, because these get missed very often. All right, so some key terms that we've learned in this section here, and I'll just run them all down. Break line, basically something continues. Center line, the center of it. Cutting plane line, cutting through, looking into it. Dashed line, basically a hidden line. Could be a vent pipe, could be an option for something else, could be to show which way a window opens. Detail designation, that's basically where it tells me where to look for that detail. Is it detail number 5 on A3? That's that circle with the arrow, and the arrow is the direction we're looking. Dimension line, that's where it's going to write the size. Extension line, that is telling us from where to where. Floor joist and floor joist direction, there's that symbol with basically the one half of an arrow and the other half of an arrow. Leader line is just pointing at something, saying this is this. Object line, this is part of the structure. Studs, well, studs I talked about joist spacing, stud spacing, 12-inch, 12-inch, 16-inch, 24-inch, very common spacings, or in metric, 300, 400, 600, but we still typically will lay them out at 12, 16, and 24 because our sheet goods comes to that. And our subfloor is what rests on top of the joist. So just some stuff I will repeat throughout the series so that it actually starts to sink in for that purpose. So definitely there's a lot of information here. There's on the drawings, so that's why we need certain standards so that we can have accuracy. We need to make sure that everything complies with our codes and standards, and we want to try to have complete information, right? So that's very important. And again, this is referenced from my textbook. If you like these series of videos and you do like looking at the channel videos, I really appreciate if you subscribe. It helps the channel. And if you have comments, questions, that's always appreciated too. So I'm Tom Stephenson, wishing you a wonderful day, and we'll see you out there. Bye for now.